instead of going forward, let's go back a bit. Because I feel like this is more for this. So, yeah. I reviewed Invincible. You might have seen that. And you might have seen the long one. But, instead of going to Invincible 2, which I did actually plan, I'm going to go back a bit. Which is to the special they had. And the reason why is simple. Besides, like, talking a bit about ideology, which I've talked about a bit, and the interesting thing about the growth, there's not a lot to talk about with, I think, because I was thinking I could talk about more, but it's mostly the same. And I don't want to repeat myself again with sort of like the second season, because besides like having one character, which I absolutely love, it is still really good, it still develops well, but overall I like making these longer ones because it's fun. I like talking about certain things, and I feel like I can talk more about Adam Eve. I don't know when this came out, but I really like it. Through the most part is I like her character. Throughout season 1, she's developing into this new thing, and through season 2, she does something even more interesting and slowly develops more and more, and I love it. Also, actually, I'm going to mention that in the next bit, but again, her powers, because obviously Adam Eve, I think it's sort of a play on like atom, being like she can sort of like manipulate atoms around her, which I think is really clever and really interesting. But overall, here's a couple of things. And yes, I had it for 2 minutes, but that's simplicity reasons. Throughout this, you have a couple of things which are like, one, she has a friend, and she's slowly like, oh look, I could change this on a molecular level, and all of that stuff. I hope you to one. This is for this section. And she runs, which, fair to a certain degree. You're dealing with someone who's like, oh look, I'm reshaping the universe. I'm like, so I'm just gonna wait here, if you don't mind. I'm just gonna be here. Because that's, as a concept of someone who can physically change reality to that much, it is insane. But it is a bit, this is a person who is in a way your friend. That is still dark. You can kind of tell Invincible, it's less dark as The Boys is. The Boys is like, oh, here's what happens if you give powers and become corrupt. This is what happens physically. Because with superheroes, you kind of have two directions. You have superheroes being corrupt, which is shown in something like The Boys. And then you have the powers have it like either physical, mental, or like just an emotional toll on you that just sometimes maybe is not having the powers. I mean, you have MHA in the middle, which kind of does a bit of both, with some being a bit more corrupt and dishanded, and some powers legitimately not being as helpful. But I do love this side of it, where like some of the powers is less like they're not responsible with it. It's more sometimes giving people visibility. Isn't that they'll take advantage? Sometimes they are good people, but sometimes you see this in season 2 with one of the things that happens, which I absolutely love. But with that, it's just really interesting with that sort of like dynamic. And when you slowly see what happens at a certain point, it's really interesting. And when they slowly reveal the antagonist, which isn't really an antagonist, it's just so dark, that the kids who come after her, it's so interesting, and so like what actually happened. And then when you reveal what's happened to her mum, it turns into like, oh, this is just like some scientist doing something. Like, still inhumane, but more, this is some scientist messing up, to, are you absolutely not psycho? They keep a person alive just so they can sort of like, oh, here's a new one. And they know it's failing. They know it keeps getting worse. And they still keep doing it over and over again. And sometimes, someone could have probably told you, if the first result isn't as good as the last, and then the second one isn't good as that, you're not gonna get better. It's just so messed up, that whole scientific, and that's what I'm saying. Like, with Invincible, yeah, you have corrupt people like the scientist doing the experiment, but you also have, because this power exists, people are like physically getting hurt. People are being sort of like just having these sort of disformities. And you see them with a couple others, which is really interesting in the Invincibles, that the powers aren't really always helping the person. Sometimes it's at a disadvantage, which is really interesting as an idea. It's so messed up, so insane, but I think it's just one of the most awesome things ever. Again, it's just so cool and just so amazing. Definitely with the powers of like reality bending. With reality bending, you can change everything. And there's a couple of scenes that even Film Theory has talked about, but I love with it all. Also, why does that so haunt my head? Yeah. I don't like it. I still don't have, I have a microphone in, and I don't have a thing that goes around the edge. Ah, there it is. Ooh. Again, the powers are just really cool. And how they sort of show it as this horrifying thing that people are taking advantage of. Also, you sort of see her grow up, because you hear in season 1 and sort of season 2, but I'm not going to talk about it too much, that there's a problem with the family. And I like how it shows, 1, this isn't just one thing, 2, that she's sort of like smart in one specific area. And I'm really annoyed with this, because it's like, oh, she's supposed to be smart. She's supposed to be a smart one and like really talented. If you are smart, that doesn't mean you're a genius in everything. I'm not going to get like a computer expert and be like, okay, sit me down and now let's talk about every single animal kingdom and how they branch off from each other. Because that's not how it works. If you are an expert in one area, or even a child prodigy in one expert, you're not going to be genius across the boards. That's how that works. Some people are smart in certain areas, some people are smart in others. And Adam Eve is someone who knows sort of like atoms and sort of can see them because of her powers. She won't be able to do everything. That's not how that works. I just hate the dad. I absolutely hate him. He's a horrible person. And if he dies by the end of the series, who cares? So yeah, that's a bit dark. And yeah, I did do it in 9 minutes because 1, simplicity, 2, I don't know, I don't need to change it, and it's more simple for me. But anyway, I just love this. This is really creative. And as a special, sort of like looking into one of the characters, please tell me there's more. I would love more specials about the backstories for more of them. It would be really fun. Like a little thing that happens before season 1, that's sort of like, oh, here's how they sort of found out the powers work, etc., etc., etc. I would absolutely love that, and it would be absolutely so fun. Again, it's really cool, really creative. I just think it's just one of the most interesting things that is part of sort of like the Invincibles. So yeah. Again, just doing shorthand, but I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy it all, and yeah. Good night.